Hello, Prasad. Hello. I can't hear any of them. Hello, Prasad. Can you see my screen?
Who is Prasad, by the way?
Okay, Prasad, the organizer over here. Yes, can I talk to Prasad? Okay, he left, I think. One
It's
second.
Gayatri, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
myself
Gayatri, this is
Gayatri.
Shiva.
Yeah, hello Shiva. Yes, I was waiting for Prasad. I didn't hear any voice from his side. He's the organizer right now, I think. I don't know.
Okay, could you
I
hold,
got a call
just
from...
hang on, let me call him on his phone.
Yes, can you see my screen? I have shared my screen. Yeah, Shiva. Yes, Shiva, can I start?
Just a minute, give me two more minutes.
Oh,
Yeah, can I put the start? Hello? Hello? Yeah. Arthur?
Hello, yeah, sure.
Okay, ask him to call me. Or ping me on Yahoo. Okay, thank you. Right now, how many people are supposed to participate in this session?
I was told that there will be 5 people.
It's 5 people other than me, right?
Yes.
Okay, so all the 5 people are in?
Along with you, I can see only 3 people. I can see only 3 people here.
Arshad is there, Gangaram is there. 1 minute, let me check. Sujat, okay. And Avanti.
Hello. Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, this is Prasad here.
Yes? Prasad here, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Prasad, can I start the class? I was
Yeah.
told by Shekhar sir.
Yeah,
Okay,
Shekhar
can I
is out,
start?
left
Because I
out
can see
today.
only, I have only 3 students today. That's
Okay,
the reason
okay.
I just want to make it confirm and then I'm going to...
Yeah,
No,
continue,
what
continue.
Prasad? What okay?
Okay.
శేఖర్ గారు ఇప్పుడే చెప్పారు ఓకే అన్నారు మరి
ఓకే అన్నారా ఓకే
What about the remaining 2 students?
ఓకే ఒకసారి నేను మాట్లాడతాను నేను ఇప్పుడే మాట్లాడాను ఆల్రెడీ
When you are supposed to be there from the beginning itself.
యా జస్ట్ వెయిట్ ఫర్ 2 seconds.
Yeah, Gayatri, I think you can start. I mean, like all the guys are in.
Okay, fine.
Hello?
Okay. Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
I
you.
can hear you. Yes. Yes, I think, hello, myself, Gayatri here. I think everyone can hear me, and then you people can view my screen. Yes, and yes, coming to, I think maybe the people who have already done with their MSc in IT. Okay, so I want to directly start with Java. Before going to Java, Java is a programming language. Okay, now your software can be classified into different. A computer is a combination of both hardware and software. Yes, we know the software. Your software is again classified into three types. That is your system software, your application software, and your programming languages. You know what is your system software? Nothing but your operating system. And what is this application software? These are the softwares which are being designed to perform a specific task. Okay. Now, how do we design this application softwares? We design this application softwares by using the programming languages. Now, even the programming languages are classified into different types. Okay, we can categorize into different types based on the requirement. Now, if we consider your C or C++, they are called the basic programming languages. Now, before the C and C++, in your earlier generations, like in 1950s and or 1960s, 1990s, okay, when the first computers were introduced, and around the beginning of your 19th century, we had many programming languages like COBOL, Pascal, Fortran. Now these languages, suppose take the example of Fortran. It stands for Formula Translator. Okay, this was a programming language used for developing only scientific applications. Now COBOL stands for Common Business Oriented Language. Now this language was used to develop something called commercial applications. So, but still they need a language, programming language, which can be used to develop any kind of application. Now they invented something like C. Now C is also a combination of different programming language, but using C, we can develop any kind of application, but it had many drawbacks like platform dependency, and it is using C programming language, we can develop only standalone applications. Now, what do we mean by standalone applications? Any of you? See, I want to make my class very interactive so that I can know the standard of the students. Still, if I want to continue with any basics or anything, so I want to communicate with you in between when I'm doing the classes. Okay, so any of you, what do you mean by standalone applications? I think everyone is from IT background, computer science background. Yes, any of you? I think everyone can hear me. I think I have 5 students in the list here.
Yes.
Yes, any of you, what do you mean by standalone applications? Standalone applications. Static applications or dynamic applications? I make it more clear. Static applications or dynamic, or we can call the distributed applications. Any of you, please?
Yeah, standalone application is static application.
Standalone applications are?
Static applications.
Yes, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by static?
We write the program for just one system and it doesn't depend on any other servers or anything like, and it works for only that system.
Yes, the applications which are written and will get executed, which can be run. Executed we mean that the programs which run on the same machine are called standalone applications or static applications. Okay, that is a major drawback of your C or C++ programming language. And we can say them as platform dependent. Now, what do we mean by platform dependent? That means the applications, suppose the program which we have written in one system, if we execute the same program on a different machine, suppose it may be in different machine, in sense it may be the variation in the operating system or any other hardware. Fine. What happens? The output what we get when we execute one application which has been written in C language in one system may give a different result in another machine. Okay, when there is any change in the machine like the operating system or hardware. So we call them as platform dependent programming language. So see, these are the two major drawbacks of your C programming. Using C, we cannot develop dynamic or distributed applications, and the next is the platform dependent programming language. Now looking at these, we got the internet somewhere in 1980s. Now, you know that internet, it is a network of networks and it supports the distributed applications only. Now, what do you mean by distributed applications? The applications which can be transmitted through a network and get executed on a different machine, we call them as distributed applications. So your internet is totally distributed. We have a centralized server located at somewhere, and we people now we are connected and we are able to communicate with each other. Now you can share I can share my screen, you can get my audio, and I can hear you people. Yes. So how it is this possible? Because of the centralized server and the distributed applications. What are the technology we are using now? They all support your distributed applications. These are all comes under your distributed applications. Now we need a programming language which can support this distributed applications. Now we can say that once internet got existence, now what was the first language that was used in internet? Okay, to what we call the system, this distributed applications. Now these are the applications which will support the client and server client-server communication, we say. So one is a system which acts like a server. Now what is your server? Your server is a centralized repository of information. So we can get any information from your server. Now we call the clients who can get the information from the server. Now this client and server communication. So suppose a client may send a request to a server. Okay, what it does, the server does, it receives the request and it has to respond to the client. Suppose you want to open your Gmail or Google. Okay, that is a website you want to open. What do you do? In your browser. Now what is a browser? Any of you? I think it's, I just want to make you interactive. That is the reason I'm asking you people. What type of application it is? Any of you?
Browser is related to client-server application. It is just an interface through which the user interacts with the server.
Now,
server
yes. Your server, your browser is an interface. It is an interactive application program, application software which helps you to view your web content. It's like an interface to view your web content. Yes. Now this, so what we do, we use a browser to send a request to the server. Fine. Now the server in return, it sends a response to the client. Now for this client-server communication, they were using something called CGI scripts. CGI stands for Common Gateway Interface. Now the CGI scripts were written by using some programming scripting languages like Perl, JavaScript and all. Before Java, they were using the Perl scripting programming language. Perl. They were using some scripting language like Perl. So it is a CGI has been written by using any scripting language. They had many scripting languages. It was not a unique programming language which was used to perform this client-server communication. And the major drawback was the time taken to execute the client-server communication, like you are sending a request or receiving the response, it was taking more time. So that was a major drawback of your CGI script. So looking at these drawbacks, so they developed some programming language called Java. Now Java is similar to C and C++ syntactically. Okay, it is similar to C and C++. Now this is all about the evolution of your Java programming language. Now C and C++, C is totally called a structured programming language. C is called a structured programming language. Now you may be having an idea about what is a structured programming language. We classify the programming languages into different types like structured programming language, procedural, non-procedural and object-oriented programming language. You might have gone through these concepts. Any of you can please tell me the difference between structured programming language and non-procedural programming language? What are the examples that we can share under non-procedural programming language? What are the languages which comes under non-procedural programming language? Obviously, Java is object-oriented.
Structured is like it goes by line, it takes a line by line execution.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure about my answer, but I think that it takes a line by line execution. But in object oriented programming, it's not that case.
It's not that case. Okay. The structured programming language, in sense, it is called as a modular programming language. The complete program is divided into different modules. Okay, it follows a specific structure of your program. It is a top-down approach. We have the bottom-up approach and a top-down approach, right? So it comes under a top-down approach. Now, and it is called as a modular programming language. I think everyone is familiar with C programming language. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Everyone? Yes, I think. Okay, good. Now suppose if we write a C program, first we include the header files. Yes? And we use the main function, yes, and our program statements. And suppose if you are using any functions, any user-defined functions, now where do we write these user-defined functions? Do we include them in main? Suppose I want to write a user-defined function for addition of two numbers. My function name is add, and my function reads to integer variables a comma, okay, to integer variables a and b. Okay, we'll discuss. I'm just going to discuss everything. What is a variable? I just define everything. But I want to make the difference between a structured programming language and a object-oriented programming language. Okay. Now first we declare the variables. Okay. And again followed by the program statements. Like suppose I want to assign some value, so I use my, okay. Okay, for reading, I use my scanf. Okay, no need of comma, I think. Yes, and here we use ampersand a comma. Okay, and I need to call the function. Okay, I have to make a call to function, and I am returning, my function is returning a value, so I need another variable where I can store some, I can receive my what result returned by my function. So I am directly passing my variables. Okay, now then printf. So what type of value it is going to print, I have to specify by using the format specifier, and then display the value in the variable. Now in the add function, I declare another variable to store the result. I say a plus b, and I say now this is a C program. Okay, I've written the C program. I think as I just told you people told me that you are familiar with C, right? Now we'll make out the difference by looking at this program. Fine. Now first we include the header file stdio.h, followed by the main function. Fine. And in this function we are declaring 3 integer variables. Yes. Now any of you can please tell me, what is this hash include stdio.h? What is the use of the first line here?
That is the input and output header file.
It is a standard input-output header file. Now why we are here? What's the purpose of that? Why are we using this?
If you, yeah, that library file is used to take the AMD values and store it
Uh,
the.
I can't hear you. Please a bit aloud.
Yeah, the library file, input and output library file is used to take the AMD values and store the value in the C.
Okay, store the values. Now, how is this possible? How it has been done? May I know who is talking to me?
Nitish.
Nitesh. It is. Please tell me your name.
Nitish.
Nitish. Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
actually,
Nitish.
I don't have a laptop today, so I'm sharing with you.
Okay, no issue. I just want to come to know your names. That's it. Okay. Now, any other answer? Any of you? Any other? Yes. See, the first statement. Yes.
I can't say whether it's right or wrong, but to make the functions like printf and scanf work on it.
Yes, yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. Now we are using something called printf and scanf. Now what are these printf and scanf? These are inbuilt functions. See, in Java, in C programming language, we can write two types of functions, right? There we have the inbuilt functions and user-defined functions, right? Now what are the inbuilt functions? We have all these inbuilt functions are stored in your header files. Now these header files are nothing but your library. Now what we know in general, what do you mean by a library? Fine, where we can get any information, right? Now here we are calling them as library because this stdio.head stands for standard input output header file. Now this header file has all the inbuilt functions which will perform your standard input output operations. Fine. Now what is a function? What is the definition of a function? What is a function? A function is a group of statements or a collection of statements which can perform a specific task. Okay, what we do in a function, now if you see, my function name is add here. Now within this function, we know that the opening and closing brace, we use this opening and closing flower brackets, we use to enclose a group of statements, right? Now here in this add function, we are enclosing some statements. Now a function is a group of statements which can perform a specific task. Now if you observe this add function, it is going to perform the sum of two numbers and it is going to return the result of the sum of two numbers. Fine, this is called the user-defined function which is written by a programmer. Now your printf and scanf are the inbuilt functions. Now these are the functions which are already written and they are in your standard input-output header file. Now when we compile this program, yes, now what is a compiler? See, I am asking these questions because I want to make sure to what extent you people can understand, and just, yes, you people are already done with these things, but I want to just brush up with all these concepts so that it will help us to do our these sessions. Okay, we have a just brief discussion, we just revise the concepts and it will make easy for you also.
Okay.
And in Java, it is like we have all the concepts like if you go through today's topic, then only you can understand the tomorrow's topic. They are all interrelated topics. So that is the reason I want to make sure that every one of you are perfect in the basics. You people are perfect, I know that, because you are doing your PG and your MS, and I just want to refresh with all the concepts, that's it. Now what is a compiler? What is a compiler?
A compiler which compiles a given content of code and creates a object to it, class object to it. That is
Now what is that object? I can see many
Compiler
people
is a
in
software program which transfers the code which the user can understand to the code which the machine can understand.
Yes, absolutely. It's like a translator software which will translate your complete program into the machine understandable format. You know that your computer can understand only the binary language, that is ones and zeros, and we call it as the machine language. Now, our machine can understand only everything in the form of ones and zeros. Now what is ASCII? What is ASCII? ASCII. What is ASCII?
The American Standard Code, right?
Yes, it is an American standard code for information interchange. Yes, what is it? What is this standard about? What is this standard about?
It converts alphabets into binary.
Yes, it converts. It is a standard which has given a range of code values for all the keys present on your keyboard. Okay, we humans, we can understand these languages, all the symbols present on your keyboards, all the functional keys. Yes, all the numbers we can understand, but your machine cannot understand. Fine. Now suppose if you look at the numbers, yes, any number can be converted. We know the binary conversion, right? Binary. Yes, any number we can divide it by 2. Okay, if we take the LCM, we can get the binary value, right? Fine. So numerics can be converted into binary. Now what about the symbols and alphabets? They are not numbers, right? So ASCII is a standard, and we humans, we are using all the alphabets. Now ASCII is a standard which has given a range of code values for all the keys present on your keyboard. Fine, and it ranges from 0 to 255. Okay, this code range from 0 to 255. Now each and every key on your keyboard has a code value. Suppose I'm just giving an example. Your capital A to Z, their ASCII values are 65 to 90. Suppose if you are typing capital A, its ASCII value is 65. Now 65 is an integer which has been converted into a binary format and saved in your machine. So in this way, each and every key has a code value. Now so your small letters, their ASCII range is from 97 to 122. Now you say that your programming languages are case sensitive. Now what do you mean by this case sensitive? Yes, what do you mean by case sensitive? You can see the answer on my screen itself.
I mean, it's not okay with, yeah, like it's not okay with small letters and capital letters. Instead of,
yes, because we know that capital letters and small letters both are same, but we are writing in capital and we are writing in small. We know that, we can understand, but for your machine, they are both totally different, because the ASCII values for your capital letters and your small letters is totally different. That is the reason in your programming languages we use some keywords. Now if you observe, we are using the hash include over here. Yes, this include is a keyword. Now your void is also a keyword, your main is also a keyword. Now int, what we are using, the data type name here, we are using it as int. Yes, I can hear some disturbance, please. Okay, the int over here, this is also what? A keyword. Now what are the keywords in programming language? The keywords are reserved words, we say. The keywords are reserved words whose meaning is already given to the compiler. Now whose meaning is already given to the compiler. Now what is this compiler? It is a translator software which will translate the complete program into machine understandable format. And we are using some specific syntax or rules which are mandatory to write a program. Yes. Now all these rules, all these keywords are being already explained to the compiler. Now for first step in to write a C program, first we have to include the header files. Then we need to call the main function. Now what is the use of the main function? This is also an inbuilt function which will execute your program. Now what are the statements enclosed within your main function will get executed. Now what is the purpose of main? To execute your program. Can we include more than one main within the same program? Can we include?
no.
No, we cannot include. Now what is the purpose of void over here? Your main function is being preceded by void keyword. Now what is this void keyword?
That means the function does not return anything.
Yes. Whenever any function is been preceded by void keyword, the function does not return any value. Now, if you observe at this add function in this program, if you observe at this add function, it is return type is an integer. Now, whenever a function is returning any value, it should be preceded by what type of value it is returning. Fine. Now, yes, where are we writing this? The definition of the add method. Are we including it within the main function? No, we are writing this add function outside of the main. Now, this is called a structured programming language or a modular programming language. We are dividing our complete program into different modules. See, what is the input to this program? The input to this program is the integer values. Fine. This input is being given in the main function, and whereas the processing. Fine. For any application, if we see, we consider these things like input, processing, and what is the output, right? Now here, if you see in this program, the input is given within the main function, the processing is done in the add function, now which is declared and defined outside of the main function. So we are dividing our complete program into different modules. Now this is called a structured programming language or a modular programming language. Now that is a major drawback of your C programming language. Now suppose when this program will get executed, what happens? Now once first it just displays using the printf. This printf function, what it does, it is a standard input output function. When we whatever the string we are passing enclosing within the printf function, what happens? It will connect to the respective output device and it will display the string onto the console. Yes, are we doing anything over here within the printf? Are we doing right those steps? Anything here? No, it is everything inbuilt. Yes, it is being, because this function, its definition is already declared in your standard input-output header file. That is the reason we call them as predefined functions or inbuilt functions. Fine. Now your scanf, what is the purpose of scanf? It is a standard input function. Now whatever we are enclosing, so we have declared the variables, right? So we want to read the values into our variables. Now, what are these? Percentile D, we call it as the format specifier. That means what type of data we are reading. Okay, we should specify. Now it will, whenever the first integer value is being passed, it can be stored in the address of the variable A and address of the variable B. Now what is a variable? Yes, any of you? How do you define a variable? What is the purpose of a variable?
So we can assign any value to the variable.
Yes. Now variable is a name given to a memory location to store some value. We can define a variable as a name given to a memory location where we can store a value. Now variable here I am saying I am declaring three variables A, B and C. Now this A, B, C are of what type? These variables of what type?
Integer.
Integer type, right? So it is an integer. Now what is the size, memory size of integer data type? How much memory will be allocated for an integer data type? If I declare any variable of integer type, how much memory is been allocated?
0 to 255.
2 bytes.
2 bytes.
2 bytes. 2 bytes of memory. You know, right? Your memory is being, how do we measure our memory? A computer memory in terms of bytes, right? Yes, we measure a computer memory in terms of bytes, right? Now 2 bytes of memory is being allocated for an integer variable. Now what is the maximum value that we can store in 2 bytes? Or in 1 byte? What is the maximum integer number that we can store in 1 byte? What is the maximum integer number that we can store in 1 byte?
0 to 4. Oops.
You know, right? 1 byte equal to 8 bits.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
1 byte
Byte equal to
is
8
equal to
bytes.
8 bits. Now, each bit represents a cell which can store either 0 or 1. Yes, each bit represents a cell which can store either 0 or 1. Now, how do we, calculate? I think you may be familiar with the binary conversions and all. See, in 1 byte we can store the maximum integer number is 255. Okay, we have the minimum and maximum integer. Your integers are the positive and the negative numbers, right? We say minus 27 to plus 128. What is the maximum number we can store? It is 256. Now, it is for 2 bytes, it is somewhere around, I think, 1000 change, I think, in 2 bytes. Now, that is the maximum integer number what we can store is. I share this data with you people, no issue in that. You can go through and 1 second. Yes. Now in 2 bytes, the maximum and minimum value that we can store is 32,767. Fine. Now when we are talking about this, now what is happening here? It will allocate 2 bytes of memory for all the integer variables, right? Now for what happens in 2 bytes we can store what is the maximum integer number that we can store in 2 bytes is something around 32,000 change. Fine. Excuse me. Fine. Now this memory. So what we are saying, the name given to a memory location to store some value we are saying. So when we declare an integer variable, now 2 bytes of memory will be allocated. Now for that particular memory location, we are naming it as A. And next again, another 2 bytes of memory will be allocated and that particular memory location name is B. And the next again, the 2 bytes of memory for that particular memory location name is C. So what is happening? We are allocating a memory location and its name is going to be A. Now when we call the printf function, what it does, it will read. We give some input. At the console, we give some input. So whatever the input value you are giving, that value is being stored in the address of A. So that is the reason we are calling the ampersand symbol as, it is indicated as address of A. So how can we define a variable now? Now a variable is defined as a name given to a memory location where we can store some value. Yes, every one of you? Yes? Did
Yeah,
you
got
get?
it.
Yes.
Yes.
Now.
Yes, got it.
Yes. Fine. Now what is this format specifier? We are saying we are using something called percentile D. What is a format specifier? Now what type of value the scanf function is going to read, it should be specified. So for integers, the format specifier is percentile D. Suppose you are reading a character input, it is percentile C. Suppose you are reading a float, okay, input to a float variable, its format specifier is percentile F. So for each and every data type what we have in C programming language, we have its appropriate format specifier. Now coming to, if you see, the printf and scanf for your inbuilt functions or a predefined functions which will perform your standard input output. Fine. Now next statement, if you see, yes, C equal to add. To the add function, we are passing the two variables A and B. Whatever the input we have read, we are passing them to what? The add function. Now what we are doing here, C equal to add A comma B. Now we call the statement as function call. So we are calling the function. Now what happens here when we call the function? Now when we call the function, now the program execution control is being passed from your main to your add function. Now does the main function has the program execution control here? No. Now when we call the function, the program execution control is being passed to the add function. Now this is what called the modular programming language, when we are jumping from one program module to another program module. Now this is a drawback of your C programming language. It is a modular programming language. So here we are dividing the program into different modules. Whereas coming to Java, Java is totally object-oriented programming language. Now what do you mean by object-oriented programming language? Everything is treated in the form of objects, we say. Now what we say is object is an instance of a class. Again, if I ask the question, what is a class? A class is a collection of objects. Now these are the definitions what I hear. If you have any of you familiar with these concepts, will you please tell me what is a class and what is an object? Or what do you understand by object-oriented programming language? Yes? Yes, what is an object-oriented programming language? Any of you? Now if we look at the programming language, any language which is called as programming language if it follows all the 4 object-oriented programming principles. Now what are these object-oriented programming principles? Like the first one is encapsulation. The next is your inheritance. Next is your
Polymorphism.
And next is your data
The
abstraction.
abstraction.
Now if we observe the first feature, encapsulation. Now encapsulation states that binding of code and data into one unit and providing security for the data is called encapsulation. Now we are saying binding of code and data. Data is nothing but the variables that we declare in a program, and code is nothing but the processing that we apply on your program, nothing but your functions. Yes? Nothing but processing. Your code is nothing but the processing that we apply on your variables. So binding of code and data into one unit and providing the security for the data is called encapsulation. That is your first object-oriented programming language. Now if you observe at the C program, are we binding both the variables and function into one unit? No, the variables are declared within the main, and what we are doing, the processing, the coding we are doing in the add function now, which is written as a subprogram. Now does this follow the object-oriented principle? Does the C language follow? No, it is a structured or a modular programming language. We are not uniting the code and data. Whereas Java is called a purely object-oriented programming language. Fine. Now we encapsulate both the code and data into one unit by using a class. Okay. Now class is a collection of member variables and member methods. Now classes take some name. Okay. Now within the class, okay, we can declare the variables, data type followed by the variable name. Okay, we can, in this manner we can declare n number of variables. Okay, and now we can call the functions. We can write the functions, return type followed by the function name, and in Java we call the functions as methods. Okay, method name. Okay, and the parameters for the method, and followed by the body of the method. That means the statements for the within the method. Close of your method, and in this way we can declare n number of methods, n number of functions. Methods are nothing but the functions. We call the functions as methods in Java. Now what we are doing, we are enclosing both data and the functions into one unit. What we are doing, we are binding both the data and methods into one unit by using something called a class. Now this is your first object-oriented programming language principle. Fine. Now that is the reason Java follows your first encapsulation, the first principle of OOPS, that is encapsulation. Now encapsulation states that binding of your code and data into one unit is called encapsulation. Now what in Java we are doing? We are writing a class. Now what is a class? A class is a collection of member variables and member methods. Now using the class, what we are doing? We are binding both the data and the functions into one unit. Yes. This is what the first OOPS principle, encapsulation. Now does C programming language follows this principle? If you have followed this program first, what we have written in C, does it follow? No. That is the reason it is called as modular. Yes.
Modular.
Yes. Did you get what is the first OOPS principle? Every one of you, did you follow?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, fine. Now that is your first OOPS principle. Now Java is called a object-oriented programming language, and still we are left. We have many OOPS principles like inheritance, polymorphism, and data abstraction. Now what is inheritance? If any of you?
Inheriting the properties of a superclass.
Yes. Inheriting the features from your parent to a child is called inheritance. Now in Java we can inherit the features of one class into another class. We say that we are inheriting the features of superclass into a subclass. Fine. We are inheriting the features of a base class into a derived class. We can use all this terminology. We have a complete session on inheritance, but I want to just briefly discuss about the features of Java now. Fine. Just now as we have discussed the drawbacks in C. Okay, and I want to get into the features of Java. Fine. Now inheriting the features. Now what happens here? Something which is already existing, instead of writing the existing code again, what we can do? We can inherit that particular code into the new code. Now this new code, it can access the already written code and it can have its own unique features. Fine. Now what we are doing? We are reusing the already existing features over there. Fine. So that is called inheritance. What is inheritance? We can inherit the features of one class into another class. By this, what we are doing? We are reusing the data again here. Fine. Now, in C, we don't have this type of feature. Now, polymorphism. Polymorphism is, which is existing in more than one format, is called polymorphism. Now, this polymorphism, we can do the examples by using the method overloading or method overriding. And when we come to the concept, I'll explain you this. Now, this is also another OOPS principle which can existing in more than one type. In general, if I discuss, which can exist in more than one type is called your polymorphism. Now, data abstraction is something like without knowing the internal functioning. Without knowing the internal functioning, we can use them. So, that is called your data abstraction. Now, we can do that by using some programming concepts. I'm just giving you the general meaning of these features, these principles. Now, any programming language, the programming language which follows all these four OOPS principles is called as object-oriented programming language. Now, that is your first feature of your Java programming. And the next one, as I was told you, the drawback was C doesn't support the distributed applications. Yes, Java, by using Java programming language, we can develop distributed applications. We can develop the distributed applications by using the concepts called applets. Now, what are applets? Applets are programs which can be transmitted over a network and can get executed on another machine. Now, they are using some programming concepts like applets in Java. We can develop web-based applications. Now, which means distributed applications. Now, using Java, we can develop both the console-based applications as well as web-based applications. And your Java is being classified into three types. Yes, your Java is being classified into three types. That is J2SE, J2EE, and J2ME. Right? Now, J2SE is Java to Standard Edition, Java to next is Java to Enterprise Edition, and Java to Mobile Edition. Now, we are going to just do about your Java to Standard Edition and your Enterprise Edition. Now Java 2 standard edition is nothing but the completely the core Java. Now what is this core Java? Core Java is totally about what is Java. What are the inbuilt things existing in Java is nothing that we're going to learn. That is nothing but your core Java. Now Java 2 Enterprise Edition. Now using this Enterprise Edition, we can develop what enterprise application, that is your distributed applications, like using concepts like JSP, servlets, your JDBC. Fine, these are all called your enterprise. Using these concepts, we can develop your enterprise applications. Now J2ME, it's totally mobile edition. Now you can develop your mobile applications. Fine, using your J2ME. Now we are just going to deal with your JTSE and your J2ME. Now that is the classification of your Java. Now, the first feature was Java is an object-oriented programming language. Any language that follows all the OOPS principles is called your object-oriented programming language. Now, the next feature is Java is called as a simple programming language. Now, why we call it as simple is like as we have the syntaxes in your C programming language. Syntaxes are nothing but the rules, right? The rules, the way they have to be used, the terms that have to, how the input should be given, how they should be processed, and how the output should be displayed. Okay, that we measure in all these terms are being written in terms of syntaxes. Fine, so it resembles similar to your C or C++. Similar syntaxes we can use, and that is the reason we say Java is an easy programming language. It's not compulsory the person who knows C and C++, they only can learn Java. Any individual without having any knowledge about C or C++ also, they can learn Java. And another thing that Java is called as a simple is because of its doesn't support multiple inheritance. Now this inheritance is being classified into different types. Any of you do have an idea about your inheritance? We have different types of inheritances. Inheritance, simple inheritance, multiple inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hybrid inheritance, and hierarchical inheritance. Have an idea about? Single inheritance is inheriting from one class, one parent class to a child class is single. Multiple, getting the features from more than one parent to a child, to a single child. Getting the features from more than one parent to a child. Like suppose you're getting the property of your father as well as you're getting the property from your mother. Suppose you're getting the property from your father only, that is your single inheritance. Suppose you're getting the property from your father as well as you're getting the property from your mother. What is happening? The child has been benefited. He is getting the property from two sides. Yes, that is called multiple inheritance. Fine. So multi-level, fine. Suppose inheriting we'll do all the programs related to these things, but I want to discuss in brief. Inheriting the features from class A to class B, and again class E is inheriting the features from class B to class A. Now this is called multi-level inheritance. Now B is getting the features of A and C is getting the features of B directly, and it indirectly gets the features of A. Fine. So we do all these things we discussed. Now your inheritance has been classified into different types: single, multi-level, multiple, hybrid, and hierarchical. And hierarchical is nothing like distributed. Fine. I'll discuss them in later. So now multiple inheritance, if you observe, it is very right. It has been very beneficial. Don't you feel like it is very beneficial? Inheriting more than one parent, yes, it is beneficial, but it will increase the program complexity. It will increase the program complexity. That is the reason the multiple inheritance feature is been eliminated in Java. I can hear some disturbance. Yes. So this multiple inheritance feature is been eliminated in Java. Now, but if you see, it is very advantageous, right? It is very advantageous. Inheriting from more than one parent is very advantageous. Now, this concept can be achieved by using something called interfaces in Java. Fine. And also some statements like, right, we have the conditional statements, looping statements, or the branching statements. In the same manner, we have something called non-looping jumping statements like break, continue, go to, and you might have worked if you. Now, what is the use of go to is, like if using the go to, we can jump from one block to another block, from one module to another module. Now what happens, suppose you have given go to more than 1 or 2 times, and without your knowledge itself, it may get into infinity. That is also enters into infinity. Now some complex features like multiple inheritance, the go to, now these kind of features are being eliminated in Java. And that is the reason Java is called as simple programming language. Now just now as we discussed, Java is an object-oriented programming language. We discussed them clearly, fine, once we get into the concepts. And next, the third feature Java is called as distributed. Now we discussed what is the distributed. Dynamic applications or distributed applications. The applications which can transfer through the network and can get executed on a different machine. It supports. Now Java supports your the distributed applications. Now you know that your networks, the data transmission is being governed by your protocols. Now any of you, what is a protocol? What is a protocol? You see something like HTTP when you are opening your any of the website. Whenever you give any address, it will convert it into http://www dot whatever the address name. Now what is a protocol? What are protocols?
Which follow the rules. A set of rules.
Protocols are rules which govern, okay, which will manage your data transmission. Like your traffic police. If you don't have any traffic police at a particular junction, what happens? So that same thing will happen because the data is being transmitted through the networks. We don't have any multiple cables over there. The same data will be transmitted through the similar cables, right? The same cables. Now how this data transmission is being managed? By your protocols. Okay. Now protocols are set of rules that will govern your data transmission. Now if you see, we have the different protocols. We see this HTTP. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocols. Now your internet, it is your ISP, internet service providers. The protocol, the major protocol that they use is your TCP/IP protocol. Now what is this TCP/IP protocol? TCP/IP protocol?
Transmission control protocol.
Internet protocol. Now this is a major transmission protocol internally which uses the different set of protocols like your HTTP. HTTP stands for your Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Now what is the use of this hypertext? What do you mean by hypertext? Now if you type something in Google, what do you see? Suppose with Google, or suppose you want to search something. Suppose I type computers itself. Now what it is showing? It is showing the list of all the websites which will provide the information about computers. Yes or not? Now you see something text underlined and which is being blue color. Now this is the link or the address of the site which will provide this information to me. Yes or not? Now this underlined text, the addresses, we call them as hypertext. Now this is called your Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Now whenever you are searching for any data in a particular website, now this search is being managed by your Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Now suppose you are downloading any file, okay, from your internet to your computer into your personal machine, that is your desktop. Now this download process is being managed by your File Transfer Protocol. Now we have many protocols: SMTP, NMTP, SNTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. Now the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, the data, whenever you open your inbox, suppose in the given list you select a particular mail, so it will just what it does, the server, it will, whatever the list in the list, whatever the mail you have selected, it just displays the content in that particular mail. Whenever you are doing this kind of request and responses, in that time this is being managed by your Simple Mail Transfer Protocols. Now Java supports your distributed application. So now whatever the library, what are the inbuilt functions we have, okay, as just now we have discussed what are the inbuilt functions we have, this will we have the so many inbuilt functions which will support all your distributed, support all these protocols. Now these are the library files which are designed according to your HTTP protocol or your TCP/IP protocol. So Java is designed for use on networks. It has an extensive library which work in agreement with your TCP/IP protocols like HTTP or FTP, all these protocols. Now next is your Java is called as a robust programming language. Now robust means advanced, right? Robust means advanced. Now if you compile any C program, now whenever you compile a program you get some errors. Now again these errors are classified into compile time errors and your runtime errors. Now what do you mean by compile time errors? What are compile time errors?
Errors which are shown while we are writing the code.
Yes.
It would be shown in red mark.
Yes, the syntax errors, we call them as syntax errors. Suppose the program syntax is the rules what we have to follow once we have written a program. Suppose any variable you are using, it has been not initialized or not been declared, or suppose you are not using any semicolon. Now what is semicolon is used to terminate any program statement, right? Suppose you are not enclosing the statements in a proper braces. Fine. Now what are these? These are all these syntax errors. Now these are called your compile time errors. Fine. Now when we get the compile time errors, it will show the line number where you get where the syntax error is. Now you just go to that line, you edit it, you again save and you recompile it. Yes. Now the programmer has to handle this compile time errors. Now once you have get rid of the compile time errors, now when you run your program, you may get any logical errors. Now your errors are classified into compile time errors and runtime errors or the logical errors. Now what are these logical errors? Suppose you have written a file program, okay? You are using a file concepts and you have written a file program, and you use a file function like fopen, and you in fopen function you pass the file name which has to be opened. Fine. And when you compile, yes, it is syntactically correct. Yes, the file function you are using and the input to the file function is the file name that you are passing. Yes, it is syntactically correct. It will compile the program, and when it is running, what it is supposed to do? It has to open that file and display the content of that particular file. Yes, and when it is trying to open the file, if the file is not existing, what it is? This type of errors are called logical errors. And suppose your for loop, okay, your for loop is a looping statement, right? Now suppose the condition in the for loop, it is not being correctly terminated. What happens? You can see continuous numbers or data scrolling on your screen because it cannot come out of that loop at all. It cannot come out of the loop at all. Now how do you come out of these kind of situations? Suppose the continuous numbers are being scrolling on your screen. How do you come out of this situation? Infinity, we call it as infinity, right? Yes, how do you come out of this situation? Any of you? Suppose continuously it is displaying the what infinity loop and it is continuously scrolling the numbers on your screen. What you do? You have to abnormally terminate, right? Either you use the control D command to stop the execution or you restart your system. Yes or not? You restart your system. What you are doing?
Yes.
You are abnormally terminating your program. What you are doing? You are abnormally terminating your program. You are forcing your program to stop the execution. Yes. Now in Java, that is a drawback in your C programming language. So we cannot handle the logical errors. Yes, the compile time errors we can handle, but we cannot handle the logical errors. Now whereas in Java we have something called exception handling. Now exceptions are nothing but your runtime errors. Exceptions are nothing but the runtime errors are called as exceptions. Now we can handle this runtime errors by using a concept called exception handling. So what we can do in this is we have given with some 5 keywords. We call them as constructs. Now as of now I just call them as keywords. Now in this using these keywords, what we can do is we can enclose all the program statements. This program statements into the exception handling code, and whatever the logical error is being raised, it will display it. It will display your compilation or compile time errors, that is your syntax errors, it will display your logical errors also. So what we can do is we can avoid this abnormal termination of your program. Fine. So because of this feature, we can say Java is a advanced, robust programming language. And the another thing is your memory management. Okay. Now what is this memory management feature is? Suppose you are writing your C programs. Now in every program we give some input. Yes. To give that input we use some variables. We declare some variables. Now whenever we declare some variables, what happens? Some amount of memory is being allocated. Yes. Now you just go and do your programs. In every program you allocate some memory to store the values. You process them and you display the output. Now what is happening to this memory used? What has happened to this used memory? Can we reuse that memory? No. Once a memory has been allocated for a particular source, the memory cannot be reused again. Yes or not?
Yes.
Yes. Now, in C programs, yes, this memory is getting wasted. The memory is getting wasted. Whereas in Java, we have something called a garbage collector. Now, the name itself you can understand. We have a garbage collector which will periodically by itself, it will invoke by itself after some particular period of time. It will invoke by itself and it will check with the unused variables which have been declared so far. It will just check with the unused variables. Okay, in Java we call them as objects, but as of now I'm just saying them as variables. Fine, so it will just check with the unused variables, the memory allocated for the unused variables which are been no longer being used. Okay, and it will just check with them and it will release the memory allocated for them. Fine, and suppose if these variables are using any resources, suppose some variable may be holding the address of a particular file which you may be have been tried to opening. Fine. So it will check with the any resources are being used, it will release the resources, and what it does, it will release the memory allocated for this variable. So using Java, the memory will not get wasted. Now ultimate requirement of any project, your real-time project is your application should use less amount of memory and it should get executed in a short period of time, in a short time. So that will be the requirement of any project, that is in your real time. So now these are the two techniques, like your exception handling your logical errors and managing your memory. Now these are the two important features of your Java. That is the reason Java is being called as a robust programming language. Now we have a complete sessions on exception handling, how this programming will be done and all we will discuss. I'm just discussing the features. Now next is your Java is called as a secure programming language. Now we know that in internet we get completely virus. You people know what is a virus? That is a program which will disturb your normal processing of your system. It will stop the normal processing of your system. Now mostly these viruses are created by concept called pointers. Now what are pointers? Pointers. What are pointers? Any of you have an idea about what are pointers? What are pointers in C? Now, pointers.
Which stores the value of other variables?
Which will store the address, not the value. It will store the address of another variable. As just now I discussed, whenever we declare a variable, some amount of memory is being allocated for the variable, right? Now we know that every byte has an address. Every memory location, that is every byte has an address location. It has the address. Fine. So now whatever the variable amount of memory has been allocated, that memory has an address. Now pointers are variables which can store the address of another variable. Now easily as anybody can go get the address using the pointers concept, get the address of the memory location, and what is the data stored in that particular memory location. Memory location can be read. That is what the hackers do, right? So anybody can get the data. Now that is a pointers concept. So viruses are then generated by the pointers concept. When we use a pointer, so virus has been created. Whereas in Java, Java doesn't support pointers. Java doesn't support pointers. So that is the reason Java is called a secure programming language. Now the next feature is Java is called as an architectural neutral programming language. Now architectural neutral means it doesn't follow any architecture. Once a program has been written, once a Java program has been written, the program, when it compiles, it will generate a .class file. We call it as the bytecode. Now this bytecode is machine independent. It is machine independent. Now this bytecode can be transmitted anywhere and can get executed on any other machine. Any other machine. That means it can be any operating system. I mean to say any operating system. So that is the reason Java is called architectural neutral. It is stated as write once and run anywhere. Write once, that means the Java program which is written once that can get executed, which can run on any machine, any location. So that is the reason we say Java doesn't follow any architecture. Now what is bytecode, what is .class file? We discuss everything in detail. I'm going to discuss with you people. Now as of now I'm just discussing the features. Next is Java is called as portable programming language. Now what does it mean by portability? Nothing but your machine independent. I told you, the programs written in C language, they can get executed. Once they get executed on the machine, the same type of output they may not give on a different machine. That is the reason they are called as standalone or static applications. Whereas Java is called as portable programming language. Java is called as a portable programming language. That means once a Java program written, the execution, when you execute the same program on a different machine, it gives that same result. We have the look and feel different for Windows 7, Windows XP and Linux. Yes or not? Excuse me.
Yes.
Yes, so the look and feel is different from the different operating system. It is totally different from one operating system to different the other operating system. Now the programs written in Java, they give the same look and feel on any operating system. That is meant by portability. There may be any change, but still you may get the same result. And one more thing to discuss over here. Now, what is a char data type? The char data type is a character data type which can store a character. Fine, if you declare any variable of character data type, okay, if we can store a character in that, and the size of your character data type is 1 byte. To store any character, 1 byte is sufficient. Because, why? Can any of you tell me why only 1 byte is sufficient to store any character? Just now we discussed the concept. You are ASCII, right? What is the code range? It is 0 to 255, right?
255. 1 byte
Yes.
stored up to 255.
In 1 byte we can store the maximum integer number is 255. And your all the ASCII code for all the characters, they range, they lie between 0 to 255 only. Yes or not? All the symbols, all the numbers, everything. Fine. So 1 byte of memory is sufficient to store a single character? Yes, absolutely it is sufficient. Whereas in Java, we need, it stores the memory, the character data type size is 2 bytes. Any of you know the reason behind this? When we know that all the characters can fit in, because their ASCII range is between 0 to 255. Any character ASCII range is 0 to 255. So any character can fit in 1 byte of memory. Now, why 2 bytes in Java? Now, if you see at Google, now here, this is in India, you can see, I can view this page in Hindi, Bengali, Telugu, Marathi, Tamil, Gujarati, Kannada, Malayalam, Punjabi. Yes, any language. I can view the information in any language. Yes or not?
Yeah.
If I want to know the today's news in Telugu, yes, I can get the news in Telugu. Whereas the ASCII supports which language? ASCII supports your English language. Yes or not? only for the alphabets. It has given the code values only for English language. Now, how it is possible that everything can be displayed in a different language other than English? That means each and every character in a different language might be given a code value which is getting displayed. Yes or not? So ASCII's, your Java supports Unicode standard or a Unicode format. We call it as Unicode. Okay. Now this is a format. Now this is a format which has given the code values for all the human languages, and the code ranges from 0 to 65,536. Okay. The code ranges from 0 to 65,536. Now you see, right, in your computer, not only in India, suppose if you see in Japan, the Yahoo, China or Japan, you see the complete site, Yahoo site in China, it will be displayed in Chinese only. Yes or not? Have you think about this? This is all possible because Java supports your Unicode. Java is designed for developing your web-based applications, totally the internet applications. Now we can see, we can translate our data into our content into any other language. This has been possible. Fine. Because your Java supports your Unicode format. Now this is a Unicode format which has given the code values for all the human languages. Now first 0 to 255, that is for the same ASCII, and the remaining starts for the other languages or other human languages. That is the reason. Now what is the maximum size? The maximum integer number that can be stored in 2 bytes is 65,536. That is the reason the character data type, it requires 2 bytes of memory for your to store a character. But now, yes, just now we have discussed about pointers. Fine. Next, dynamic. The data in Java is dynamic. The input to your Java applications is dynamic. Suppose you want to create what? A web page. You want to create a suppose not the web page. Sorry to say. Suppose you want to create your Gmail account. Fine. Now what you say? You just click on the option create account. What it does, it will just display something in the form of an application form. Yes. What you do? You give the input to it. You give your details, what is going to be your email ID. It will ask about the country, state, everything. You just give the input and you click on the accept button. What happens? Now what is the input you are giving? The input is dynamic. The data is being, input is not static over there. The input is dynamic. Suppose your ATM, take the ATM itself. Now what is the input to the ATM? Your ATM card number and the amount to be withdrawn. So what is the requirement? What do you observe here? The input is given by the end user. Okay, to the application, the input is given by the end user. So your application should be designed in such a format, whatever the input is been given, it should be respond according to that. Now suppose in some fields in your Gmail, whatever, suppose you are creating the account, and suppose you don't fill in some fields, what happens? When you click on the accept button, what happens? It just take to a particular text box and it will just it will inform you that this you did not enter any data here. Enter the data. It is mandatory. So whatever the input is being given, it should respond according to that input. So input to your Java applications is totally dynamic. Now next, Java is called as interpreted programming language. Now what is an interpreter? You know that we have different types of translators. Your translators, now you know that, right? What is a translator? It will convert the program into the machine understandable format. Yes, it's an interface, right? Now, we have 3 types of translators: assemblers, compilers, and interpreters. Now, these assemblers were used in your earlier generation programming languages. Now, currently we use the compilers and interpreters. Now, what is the difference between a compiler and an interpreter? Any of you? Difference between a compiler and an interpreter. Both are the translators we have. A compiler is a translator which will translate the complete program in one step. Your program is written. You may have few lines in your program, right? Suppose a 10 line or a 20 line program. This complete program is being translated in one step. Fine. Now coming to the interpreter, this is also a translator, but it will translate the complete program line by line. It will translate. It doesn't completely translate the program in one step. It will translate. The interpreter translate the program line by line. Okay. Now if you see what will be the difference here, the compiler in one step it is translating the complete program. So it may take less time to translate your complete program. Whereas we are saying interpreter, it will translate line by line. So obviously it may take some time. Yes. Now that is the first difference. And the next is the whatever the program translated by the interpreter will be more accurate compared to the compiler. Fine. Now in C we can use the compilers or interpreters. Mostly C programming language, it is totally they use the compilers. But if you see, there is an advantage as well as a disadvantage in an interpreter. But Java is compiled as well as interpreted. Java is compiled as well as interpreted. Now that is the reason it is called as an interpreted programming language. Now how this has been compiled and how it has been interpreted, I will discuss all these things when we discuss the JVM architecture. Okay, when I discuss the JVM. Now JVM stands for Java Virtual Machine. Okay, this is not a hardware, it is a software program which will reside on all the machines. Fine. Now because of that, Java is called a platform independent programming language. We will discuss all these, I will discuss all these topics when I discuss your JVM architecture. Next. So that Java is called as interpreted programming language. The next feature is high performance. Java is called as a high performance programming language. Now any programming language which takes the less time to execute its application, it has been categorized as high performance programming language. Now in Java it uses something called just-in-time compiler. JIT stands for just-in-time compiler, which will enhances the speed of the compilation, execution of your program. So Java is called as a high performance programming language. I want to stop the discussion here itself. Okay, tomorrow same time I want to log in, and as of now I just discuss the features and what is object oriented programming language, difference between the structured programming language and an object oriented programming language. And I just discussed the structure of a C program, what it is and how the program will get executed, what is the flow of the execution, and I just discussed about what is a function, okay, and what are the inbuilt functions and what are the user defined function, and about the header files. We had a basic discussion about few things in C programming language, and I just started the features of Java programming language. Now as we will be doing our classes, I will be sending whatever the material I discuss, I will share with you people. I will forward this material to you people, and yes, any doubts regarding this?
No.
Okay. So today I just gave the introduction to Java and what are the drawbacks in your C programming language and what are the benefits in Java. I just discussed the features of Java programming language. Okay, in brief we did. Okay. Okay. Any doubts regarding this? Any of you? We can clarify with any bit you didn't follow. Yes, Shiva, you there? Yes.
In a distributed, what is SOAP? Actually, that is also a protocol, right?
Yes, SOAP is also a protocol.
Yeah, and what is the main use of that?
Now we are not going to deal in depth with the protocols right now.
Okay.
Okay. When we comes to the programs, like when we do the advanced concepts over there, we will discuss that. Yes, Shiva, you there? Okay, anyway, yes, I want to stop the session over here. Tomorrow, see you all the same time.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, any doubts? We can discuss tomorrow. Fine. Yeah, Shiva, you there?
1 second, let me call him within case.
Okay, see you tomorrow same time. Okay, then I'm leaving. I think he's not, he's busy. Yes, any of you have to discuss anything?
Hello?
Yes, hello?
Yeah, Gayatri, 1 second. I'm just calling you.
Okay, let it be. Whom I'm talking to?
This is Gangaram.
Yeah, Gangaram. It's fine. I think you might be informed about the timings.
Yeah.
What did you say about the duration? Time will be from 9. Is it for 1.5 hour?
I don't have the exact details. That's the reason I raised from the call. I think he's done with the call. Let me call him back. I think
Okay.
he's in the call even. I think he just muted himself.
Yeah, Gangaram. Today I was told to discuss about the basics. Okay. So that was the reason I was totally discuss about the basics and okay, and just now I just started with the discussion about the features of Java. Okay, tomorrow class. Hello.
Hello? Yeah,
Hello,
Gayatri.
Shiva. Yeah, I want to stop the class now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, fine. I want to end the session now.
And I mean, like, did you give 1 minute, Gayatri? Did you give any exercises to these people?
No, today I just had some general discussion, that's it. From tomorrow I'll start the programming concepts. So from tomorrow I'm going to start.
Okay, sure. Don't, I mean, like, those are the most important things. Okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'll make sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Gayatri.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay.
నాకు పంపలేదు కానీ చేస్తాను నువ్వు పంపించేస్తాను